The ship appeared without warning on a cold December morning in the year 2147. It was massive, larger than any structure humans had ever built. The vessel hung in the sky above New York City like a dark cloud, blocking out the winter sun and casting a shadow over millions of people who stopped in the streets to stare upward. Admiral Daniel received the call while eating breakfast with his wife in their small apartment in Virginia. Within 30 minutes, he was inside the United Earth Defense Headquarters, surrounded by generals, scientists, and politicians who all wore the same expression of shock and fear. "We've been trying to communicate with them for the past hour," said Doctor, the chief diplomatic liaison. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and calm eyes that never seemed to panic, even now. "They finally responded. They want to meet." "Where?" Daniel asked. "The United Nations building. They're sending a delegation down in 1 hour." Daniel looked around the room at the faces of the most powerful people on Earth. For years, humanity had wondered if they were alone in the universe. They had built ships, explored distant stars, and found nothing but empty planets and silent moons. Now, the answer had come to them. "What do we know about them?" he asked. Pulled up a holographic display. The alien ship rotated slowly in blue light. "Almost nothing. Their technology is far beyond ours. Our scans can't even penetrate their hull. We're completely blind." 1 hour later, Daniel stood in the main chamber of the United Nations alongside 200 world leaders. The room was silent. Everyone watched the entrance, waiting. The doors opened, and 3 figures walked in. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with pale blue skin and large black eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They wore flowing silver robes, and they moved with a grace that made them seem like they were floating rather than walking. The one in the center carried a small device in his long fingers. "I am ambassador of the species," the creature said. His voice was smooth and cold, like wind passing through an empty cave. "I speak for the Galactic Council." Daniel stepped forward. "I am Admiral Daniel. I speak for the people of Earth. Welcome to our world." Did not smile. He did not offer any gesture of friendship. He simply raised the device in his hand, and a holographic image appeared in the air above the assembly. It showed a map of the galaxy, with thousands of colored dots representing different species and territories. "The Galactic Council has governed this galaxy for 12,000 years, said. "We maintain peace. We control trade. We decide which species may travel between stars and which must remain confined to their home systems. Your species has recently developed faster than light travel. This brings you under our authority." A murmur passed through the crowd. Daniel felt his stomach tighten, but he kept his face calm. "We were not aware of any authority beyond our own," he said carefully. "Earth has governed itself for its entire history." "That history is over," replied. "You will now submit to council governance. These are the terms." He pressed a button on his device, and a list of demands appeared in the air, translated into every major Earth language. Daniel read them slowly. Earth would surrender all military vessels to the Council. Earth would accept a permanent monitoring station in orbit. Earth would not expand beyond its current territory without Council approval. Earth would pay tribute in the form of resources and technology. In exchange, Earth would receive protection from hostile species and limited access to interstellar trade. The room erupted in angry voices. Politicians shouted at each other and at the aliens. Some demanded immediate acceptance. Others called for war. The noise grew louder and louder until Daniel raised his hand and called for silence. "Ambassador," he said, "these terms are not acceptable. Earth is a free world. We do not submit to anyone." Tilted his head slightly as if he found the statement amusing. "Every species says this at first. The said it, the said it, the said it. They all submitted eventually. Some chose war. They no longer exist." "Is that a threat?" Daniel asked. "It is a statement of fact. The Council does not threaten. The Council does not negotiate. The Council simply is. You may take 30 of your planetary rotations to discuss among yourselves, but the outcome will be the same. It always is. Turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back at the assembly. "You are a young species," he said. "You have achieved much in a short time. It would be unfortunate to see you destroyed over something as simple as pride." Then he was gone, and the doors closed behind him. The room remained silent for a long moment, then approached Daniel with a troubled look on her face. "They're not bluffing," she said quietly. "I studied their body language the entire time. They believe every word they said. They've done this before, probably hundreds of times." "I know," Daniel replied. "So what do we do?" Daniel looked up at the holographic map still floating in the air. He saw Earth marked as a small blue dot on the edge of the galaxy, surrounded by the vast territories of species he had never heard of. "We have 30 days," he said. "In 30 days, we have to make a choice that will determine the future of our entire species." "And what choice is that?" Daniel turned to face her. "Whether we want to live as servants or die as free people." Over the next 4 weeks, Earth argued. Nations that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves on the same side. Old grudges were forgotten. Old alliances were renewed. Every person on the planet watched the news and waited for their leaders to decide. On the 29th day, Daniel stood before the United Earth Defense Council and asked for a final vote. "We all know the risks," he said. "We all know what could happen if we refuse, but I believe that some things are worth fighting for. Freedom is one of them. Our future is one of them. The right to choose our own destiny is one of them. I will not ask anyone to follow me into danger. I only ask that you vote your conscience." The vote was unanimous. Earth would not submit. And somewhere in orbit above the planet, aboard his massive ship, Ambassador received the news. He smiled, using a gesture his species reserved for moments of contempt. "Interesting," he said to his aide. "They actually refused." "Shall I inform the council?" "Yes, tell them to prepare the blockade. The humans need to learn the same lesson as all the others." He turned to look out the window at the blue planet below. It will not take long. Council's blockade arrived 3 days after Earth refused their terms. 300 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel and formed a perfect sphere around the entire solar system. Each ship was the size of a small city, armed with weapons that Earth scientists could not even understand. Commander Price stood on the bridge of the defense station orbiting Mars and watched the alien fleet take position. He was a calm man, the kind who never raised his voice even in crisis. But today, his hands were shaking. "They've cut off every trade route," his communications officer reported. "Our mining operations on the asteroid belt are completely isolated. The colonies on Europa and Titan are requesting emergency supplies." Nodded slowly. "How long can they hold out?" 2 months, maybe 3. After that, they'll start running out of food and oxygen." "And Earth?" The officer hesitated. "Earth has more resources, but if the blockade continues for a year, we'll face shortages. Medicine, rare metals, fuel for our reactors. We depend on our outer colonies for too much." Turned away from the alien ships hung in the darkness like silent judges, waiting for humanity to break. "Send a message to Admiral," he said. "Tell him the blockade is complete, and tell him we need a plan." Back on Earth, Daniel received the message while meeting with world leaders in Geneva. The mood in the room was grim. Some politicians argued for immediate surrender. Others demanded a military response that everyone knew would be suicide. Doctor stood at the window, watching the protesters in the streets below. Millions of people had gathered in cities around the world, carrying signs and shouting slogans. Some wanted peace at any cost. Others refused to give up their freedom. "The council is waiting for us to panic," she said without turning around. They've done this before. They know exactly how long it takes for a species to lose hope. Then what do you suggest? Daniel asked. Finally turned to face him. I suggest we don't give them what they expect. Over the next few weeks, Earth went quiet. The protests faded. The news channels stopped their constant coverage of the blockade. From the outside, it looked like humanity had accepted its fate and was simply waiting for the end. But beneath the surface, something else was happening. In the mountains of Colorado, a secret facility that had been built decades ago for a war that never came was now filled with thousands of engineers and scientists. They worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts, eating at their desks. Their mission was simple but nearly impossible: build a fleet capable of challenging the Council. Vice Admiral Casey was in charge of the operation. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought pirates in the outer colonies and led rescue missions in the asteroid belt. But this was different. This was a war for survival. We have the designs, she told her team during their first meeting. We have the materials, we have the people. What we don't have is time. How long do we have? Asked one of her engineers. 6 months, maybe less. The engineer laughed nervously. That's impossible. Building a single warship takes 2 years minimum. Smiled without humor. Then we'll have to do the impossible. That's what humans do. The work began in secret locations all over the solar system. In the asteroid belt, miners who had been cut off by the blockade started converting their equipment into weapons. On the moons of Jupiter, hidden factories produced ship components that were smuggled back to Earth through routes the Council never discovered. Meanwhile, a young intelligence officer named was running a different kind of operation. She had been recruited straight out of college for her skills in code breaking and data analysis. Now, she led a team of hackers who had one job: learn everything possible about the Council and their technology. They're arrogant, she told Admiral during a secure video call. They've been in power so long that they've stopped being careful. Their communication systems have weaknesses. I can exploit them. What kind of weaknesses? Daniel asked. Their encryption is old, really old. They haven't updated it in centuries because no one has ever challenged them. Give me 3 months and I can read every message they send. Daniel considered this for a moment. Do it, but be careful. If they discover what you're doing, they'll know we're planning something. Grinned, they won't discover anything, trust me. As the months passed, the Council grew impatient. Ambassadors sent regular messages demanding Earth's surrender, each one more threatening than the last. When Earth stopped responding entirely, he became concerned. Something is wrong, he told his commanders aboard the flagship. They should be begging by now. Their colonies are running low on supplies. Their people are suffering. Why are they not afraid? Perhaps they are simply stubborn, one commander suggested. No species is this stubborn. They are planning something. Ordered increased patrols along the outer edges of the blockade. He sent scout ships deeper into the solar system to search for signs of military activity, but they found nothing. Earth's defense stations remained passive. Their few warships stayed in orbit, making no aggressive moves. What did not know was that humanity's new fleet was not in orbit. It was hidden in places his scouts would never think to look. Ships were being assembled inside hollowed-out asteroids. Weapons were being stored in the ice caves of distant moons. Entire armies were training in underground facilities that did not appear on any map. On the last day of the 6th month, Casey stood in the control room of her hidden base and watched as the final ship rolled off the assembly line. It was smaller than the Council's vessels but faster, more agile, and armed with weapons designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses team had discovered. How many do we have? Price asked through a secure channel. 247 combat-ready ships, replied, plus support vessels, transport carriers, and enough ammunition to fight a war. Is it enough? Looked at the fleet displayed on her screen. Compared to the Council's 300 warships, it seemed almost pitiful, but she had studied the enemy. She knew their tactics. She knew their weaknesses. It will have to be enough, she said, because this is all we've got. That night, Admiral sent a single coded message to every human outpost in the solar system. It contained only 4 words. Operation Defiance begins tomorrow. Across millions of miles of space, in hidden bases and secret facilities, humanity prepared for war. They were outnumbered and their technology was primitive compared to the Council's ancient vessels. By every logical measure, they should have no chance of winning. But logic had never stopped humans before. And it would not stop them now. The first Council ship disappeared on a Tuesday. It was a patrol vessel stationed at the edge of the blockade, far from the rest of the fleet. One moment it was sending routine reports. The next moment it was gone. No distress signal, no debris, just silence. Aboard the Council flagship, Commander L reviewed the sensor data with growing confusion. The ship simply vanished, he told Ambassador. There was no energy signature, no weapons fire, nothing. It is as if space itself swallowed them. Studied the data himself. In his 1,200 years of service to the Council, he had never seen anything like this. Send another patrol to investigate. That patrol disappeared too. Over the next 2 weeks, the Council lost 14 ships along the outer edges of the blockade. Each one vanished without warning, without explanation. The remaining crews became nervous. Rumors spread through the fleet about invisible enemies and ghost ships. Vice Admiral Casey watched the chaos unfold from her command center inside a hollowed asteroid. Her pilots had performed perfectly. They had used the intelligence gathered by STEAM to identify gaps in the Council's sensor coverage. They had attacked without mercy and retreated without being seen. They're scared now, she told her officers during a strategy meeting. Good, fear makes people make mistakes. Price appeared on screen from the Mars Defense Station. The blockade is weakening. They've pulled ships from the outer ring to reinforce the inner positions. If we hit them now, we can punch a hole through. Not yet, replied. We need to draw more of them away. I want their fleet spread as thin as possible before we make our main move. She turned to her tactical officer. Send the next wave, target their supply lines, no survivors. The attacks continued for another month. Council ships were destroyed while refueling. Communication satellites were disabled one by one. A transport carrying fresh troops was intercepted and captured, its crew taken prisoner without firing a single shot. Ambassador demanded answers from his commanders. How is this possible? They are primitives. Their ships are inferior. Their weapons are weak. How are they defeating us? No one had an answer. Finally made a decision. Pull the fleet back. Form a defensive position around Earth. If they want to fight, they will have to come to us. It was exactly what had been waiting for. On the day of the main assault, the human fleet emerged from hiding like ghosts rising from the grave. They came from the asteroid belt and the moons of Saturn, from secret bases on Neptune's frozen plains and hidden stations floating in the empty space between worlds. 247 ships, moving together in perfect formation. Stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance, watching her fleet take shape around her. These ships were crewed by farmers and miners, teachers and doctors, ordinary people who had volunteered to fight for their world. They were not warriors by training, but they had something the Council did not understand. They had something to fight for. All ships report status, she ordered. One by one the captains responded. Everyone was ready. Everyone was in position. Then let's go introduce ourselves, said. Attack formation, full speed ahead. The battle began at 600 hours Earth time. Human ships swept toward the Council fleet in a wave of fire and steel. The Council commanders, accustomed to facing enemies who ran or surrendered, were shocked by the ferocity of the attack. Captain Mercer led the first strike wing. His ship, the Horizon, dove straight toward the largest council vessel, dodging weapons fire with maneuvers that should have been impossible. Behind him, 20 fighters followed his path exactly, trusting him with their lives. "Their shields are weakest at the engine ports," he told his wing. "That's our target. Get in close and hit them hard." The first Council battleship exploded at 6:23 hours. The second fell at 6:41. By noon, the humans had destroyed 30 enemy vessels and damaged dozens more. But the Council was not beaten yet. Ordered a counterattack, sending his remaining ships in a coordinated assault on the human fleet. The fighting became desperate. Ships crashed into each other. Pilots ejected into the cold vacuum of space and were rescued by teammates or left to drift. Watch the battle unfold on her tactical display. They were winning, but barely. The Council's superior technology was starting to turn the tide. For every enemy ship they destroyed, they lost 2 of their own. "We need to end this quickly," she muttered. Then's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Admiral, I have something. I've broken into their command network. I can see all their orders in real time." His heart jumped. "Tell me everything." Relayed the Council's battle plan. Their fleet was about to split into 3 groups, trying to surround the human ships. But now that knew the plan, she could counter it. "All ships, new formation," she ordered. "We're going to hit them where they least expect it." The human fleet changed direction in an instant, moving with coordination that stunned the Council commanders. Instead of fighting all 3 enemy groups, concentrated her entire force on the smallest one. The Council ships in that group were overwhelmed and destroyed in minutes. Then she turned to the second group, then the third. By sunset, the Council blockade was broken. Over 200 enemy ships had been destroyed or captured. The survivors fled toward the edge of the solar system, broadcasting distress signals to anyone who would listen. On the bridge of the Defiance, the crew erupted in cheers. Officers hugged each other. Some cried with relief. They had done the impossible. They had beaten the Galactic Council. But did not celebrate. She stood at the window, looking out at the debris field where so many ships had died. Human ships, Council ships, so many lives lost in a single day. Price appeared beside her. "You did it," he said quietly. "You actually did it." "We won a battle," replied. "Not the war. The Council will send more ships, bigger fleets, stronger weapons. This is just the beginning. Then we'll beat them again, and again, as many times as it takes." Nodded slowly. She knew he was right. Humanity had proven something today. They had shown the galaxy that they were not afraid, that they would not bow, that they would fight for their freedom no matter the cost. The Council had expected Earth to surrender after a few months of pressure. Instead, humans had built a secret fleet and launched the first successful rebellion in 3,000 years. Now the real test would begin. Back on Earth, Admiral received the news of the victory with mixed emotions. He was proud of what and her fleet had accomplished, but he knew that destroying ships was not the same as winning peace. "What happens next?" asked him. Daniel looked up at the stars, thinking about all the battles yet to come. "Next, we make them understand. This isn't over until they accept us as equals, and if they won't accept us, then we'll make them." Somewhere in the darkness of space, the survivors of the Council fleet were already sending their report home. The humans had fought back, and the galaxy would never be the same. The news of the blockade's destruction reached the Galactic Council within hours. High Counselor read the report in his private chambers, his pale face becoming paler with each line. 40,000 Council soldiers dead, 200 ships lost, the greatest military embarrassment in 3,000 years. He summoned an emergency meeting of the full Council. "This cannot be allowed to stand," he declared to the assembled representatives. "The humans have made fools of us. If we do not respond with overwhelming force, Every species in the galaxy will think they can defy us." Ambassador, who had barely escaped the battle, stood before the council with his head bowed in shame. They were not what we expected. They fought with a desperation we have never seen. They did not care about their own survival. They only cared about victory. "Then we will give them defeat instead," said coldly. "We will send the Grand Armada, every ship we have. We will burn their planet to ash and scatter their species across the void. Let them serve as a warning to anyone else who dreams of rebellion." The council voted unanimously. Within 1 week, the Grand Armada began its journey toward Earth. 1,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. Enough soldiers to conquer 100 worlds. On Earth, Admiral received the intelligence report from his team. He read it twice, making sure he understood the numbers correctly. 1,000 ships, he said quietly. Sat across from him, her face pale. "Can we beat them?" "No, not in a straight fight. We lost half our fleet breaking the blockade. Even if we rebuild as fast as we can, we'll have maybe 300 ships by the time they arrive. They'll outnumber us more than 3-1. "Then what do we do?" Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and called Casey. "We can't fight them in our home system," he said when she answered. "We need to stop them before they get here." "You want to attack them in transit?" asked. "That's insane. We don't even know their exact route." She's been tracking their communication since the blockade fell. She knows where they're planning to exit faster than light travel. She knows when they'll arrive." There was silence on the other end of the line. Daniel could almost hear thinking. "The transit point," she finally said. "It's the only stable jump corridor in this sector. If they're bringing a fleet that large, they have to use it. There's no other way." "Exactly. And when a ship exits faster than light travel, it's vulnerable for approximately 30 seconds while its shields recalibrate. If we're waiting for them when they arrive, we can hit them before they know what's happening." His voice had changed. The doubt was gone, replaced by something harder. "It's a massive risk. If our timing is wrong by even a few minutes, we'll be caught in open space against 1,000 warships." "I know," Daniel replied, "but it's the only chance we have." Was quiet again. Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. "All right, Admiral, let's go kill an armada." The human fleet launched 3 days later. 312 ships, carrying every soldier Earth could spare. They traveled in complete radio silence, using routes that avoided all Council patrols. Had studied the enemy's sensor patterns for weeks. She knew exactly where their blind spots were. Captain Mercer commanded the advance squadron. His job was to arrive at the transit point first and set up sensor buoys that would give them advance warning of the Armada's arrival. It was dangerous work. If the Council detected him, the entire plan would fall apart. "How are you feeling?" asked him during their final communication before radio silence. Smiled through the video screen. "Like I'm about to do something incredibly stupid, so pretty normal for a Tuesday. Just don't get yourself killed. I need you for the main assault." "Yes, ma'am. See you on the other side." The human fleet arrived at the transit point with 6 hours to spare. They spread out in a wide arc, hiding behind asteroids and debris clouds. Every ship went dark, running on minimal power, waiting in silence. Monitored the enemy communications from her station aboard the Defiance. "They're coming," she reported. "First wave will exit in approximately 4 minutes." Took a deep breath. This was it. Everything they had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, came down to the next few hours. "All ships prepare for combat. Wait for my signal. Do not fire until I give the order." The first Council ships emerged from faster-than-light travel exactly where had predicted. They appeared in a flash of light, their shields flickering as their systems recalibrated. For 30 precious seconds, they were defenseless. Fire ordered. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Missiles streaked across the darkness. Energy weapons painted the void with deadly light. The Council ships, still disoriented from their jump, had no time to react. The first 100 enemy vessels were destroyed before they even knew they were under attack. Then chaos erupted. More Council ships kept emerging from the transit point, wave after wave. Some managed to raise their shields and return fire. Space became a storm of explosions and burning metal. Ships collided and broke apart. Escape pods scattered in every direction. Mercer led his squadron straight into the heart of the enemy formation. "Target their command ships," he ordered. "Cut off the head and the body will die." He found the Council flagship after 20 minutes of searching. It was a massive vessel, 3 times the size of anything else in the fleet. High Counselor himself was aboard, personally overseeing the invasion. "This is Captain Mercer of the Earth vessel Horizon," broadcast on an open channel. "You are surrounded and surrender now and your lives will be spared." The response came in a burst of weapons fire that nearly destroyed his ship. "Okay," muttered, pulling hard on the controls. "The hard way it is." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 700 Council ships had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors, including the damaged flagship, were captured. High Counselor was taken prisoner, still unable to believe what had happened. Stood on the bridge of the Defiance, exhausted but alive. They had lost over 100 ships. Thousands of human soldiers had died, but they had won. "Send a message to Earth," she told her communications officer. "Tell them the Armada has been defeated. The war is over." On the captured flagship, Mercer found sitting alone in his command chamber. The alien looked old and broken, nothing like the powerful leader who had ordered Earth's destruction just weeks ago. Hal whispered, "How did you do this?" Considered the question. He thought about his parents, who had been farmers on Mars. He thought about his sister, who taught children in a small town in Montana. He thought about all the ordinary people who had given their lives for this moment. "You asked the wrong question," he finally said. "You asked how we did it. You should have asked why." Looked up at him, confused. "We did it because we had to," continued. "Because giving up wasn't an option. Because we're human and that's what we do. We fight. We survive. We win." He turned and walked away, leaving the defeated counselor alone with his thoughts. The war was over. Now came the harder part, building a peace. The treaty negotiations took 3 months. Earth sent its best diplomats to the Council's home world, a planet called Prime that orbited a dying red star on the far side of the galaxy. Doctor led the delegation, with Admiral serving as military advisor. The Council chamber was enormous, large enough to hold thousands of representatives from hundreds of different species. Had never seen so many aliens in one place. There were creatures with scales and creatures with fur, beings made of living crystal and beings that seemed to be nothing but pure light. All of them watched the human delegation with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Understood their reaction. For 12,000 years, the Galactic Council had been the undisputed authority in this region of space. They had conquered, absorbed, and controlled every species they encountered. No one had ever successfully them. Until now. High Counselor was no longer in power. After his defeat at the transit point, he had been removed from office and replaced by a younger, more pragmatic leader named. She was the first female to hold the position in Council history, and she seemed genuinely interested in finding a peaceful solution. "The Council has made mistakes," admitted during the opening session. "We approached humanity as subjects rather than equals. We assumed that because your technology was inferior, your spirit would be inferior as well. We were wrong." Nodded carefully. "We appreciate your honesty, but words alone are not enough. We need guarantees. We need actions." "What do you propose?" Pulled out a document that she and her team had spent weeks preparing. It outlined Earth's demands in clear, simple language. Full recognition of Earth as a sovereign power with complete control over its own territory. The right to expand and colonize any unclaimed systems. Unrestricted access to interstellar trade routes. A permanent seat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights. Reparations for the damage caused by the blockade and the war. Release of all human prisoners taken during the conflict. And most importantly, a formal apology delivered to every species in the galaxy, acknowledging that Earth had been treated unjustly. Read the document slowly. Some of the other counselors muttered in disapproval. A few shouted that the demands were outrageous, but silenced them with a raised hand. "These terms are fair," she said. "Perhaps more fair than we deserve. The Council accepts." The treaty was signed on the summer solstice of 2148, exactly 1 year after the first Council ship had appeared above New York City. Put her name on the document besides, officially ending the war and beginning a new chapter in galactic history. Back on Earth, the celebrations lasted for days. People danced in the streets. Fireworks lit up the sky over every major city. Children who had grown up during the blockade, who had learned to fear the aliens in the sky, now looked up at the stars with hope instead of terror. Admiral did not participate in the celebrations. He stood alone on the observation deck of the United Earth Defense Headquarters, watching the sunset paint the clouds in shades of orange and red. Casey found him there, after searching for nearly an hour. "You should be out there," she said, joining him at the window. "You're a hero. The whole planet wants to thank you." Daniel shook his head. "I'm not a hero. I'm a soldier who got lucky. The real heroes are the ones who didn't make it back." Understood. She had lost friends in the war too. Good people who had volunteered to fight because they believed in something larger than themselves. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we build," Daniel replied. "We have a seat on the council. We have access to technology that will advance our civilization by centuries. We have the respect of species that have been exploring space since before humans invented fire. The question is what we do with all of it." "And what do you think we should do?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened. The fear and the anger, the sacrifice and the triumph, the ordinary people who had become extraordinary because their world needed them. "I think we should remember," he finally said. "Remember what we fought for. Remember why we refused to surrender. Remember that freedom isn't something you receive. It's something you defend every single day forever." 6 months later, the first human ambassador took her seat on the Galactic Council, looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces staring back at her. Some were friendly, some were hostile, most were simply curious, wondering what this young species would do next. Ambassador, who had remained on the council in a lesser position, approached her before the session began. "I owe you an apology," he said. "When I first came to Earth, I thought your species was primitive, weak. I was wrong about everything." Smiled politely. "You weren't entirely wrong. Compared to most species here, we are young. Our technology is still developing. Our civilization is still growing. But youth isn't the same as weakness. Sometimes it's the opposite." "What do you mean?" "Old civilizations become comfortable. They stop changing, stop adapting. They think they have all the answers because they've been around so long. But young civilizations are still hungry. We're still learning. We're still reaching for things we don't yet have. That hunger is what makes us strong." Considered her words. "Perhaps that is why you won. Not because of your ships or your weapons, but because you wanted victory more than we did." "Perhaps," agreed. "Or perhaps we were just too stubborn to know when we were beaten." The session began and took her place among the representatives. For the first time in history, a human voice spoke in the halls where galactic policy was decided. Other species listened, some agreeing and some disagreeing, but all of them respecting the right of Earth to be heard. That evening sent a message back to Admiral. "It worked," she wrote. "We actually did it. We took our place among the stars, but I keep thinking about what you said before I left. That freedom isn't something you receive. It's something you defend. I understand now what you meant. This isn't an ending, it's a beginning. The hard work starts now." Daniel read the message in his office on Earth, surrounded by reports and plans for the future. Humanity had so much to do: new ships to build, new worlds to explore, new relationships to form with species they had never even imagined. But for just one moment, he allowed himself to feel proud. They had faced an impossible enemy and won. They had refused to bow when the entire galaxy expected them to kneel. They had proven that humanity was not just another species to be conquered and forgotten. They had proven that they were something special. Outside his window, the stars were beginning to appear in the evening sky. Each one was a sun, circled by planets that might someday become homes for human children. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and now it belonged to humanity just as much as it belonged to anyone else. Daniel smiled and returned to his work. The future was waiting, and humanity was ready to meet it.